Let me start calling. So that's the story. And the basket counts. And so the final score, the Titanium coming in upset advantage, 89-81. So the Titanium play next. And you do it for the clock. Go down. So that's the story. And the basket counts. And so the final score, the Titanium coming upset advantage, 89-81. So the Titanium play next. And you do it for the clock. Go down. So that's the story. And the basket counts. And so the final think it was more of a feeling
Okay.
because, as he said, they were always playing with a full house. A lot of people, came to see them. Whereas some of the other teams, maybe they weren't so certain. You know,
Right.
the Nets had to know, right? I mean, they got the best player in the league. They had to know.
They had some security there, certainly. Yeah, with Dr. J. I just remember I went back and read the local newspaper coverage of the Pacers that season at the end, and when they got eliminated in the playoffs in the first round, the tone of the article was, "Well, we'll just have to see what happens next." no talk about getting into the NBA at that time. So it took a couple months before the merger stuff really came into effect. And like I said, the Pacers barely got in. But I think when the season ended, it was like, okay, let's see what's going to happen here. We hope something does.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah, it was shaky.
Unbelievable. And since you're an Indiana guy and you're a Pacer guy, I would be remiss, and I know I'm going a little bit further back, but I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you your memories or your thoughts about the marathon, the telethon. I'm sorry, the
Telethon.
telethon.
Yeah, yeah. That was the summer I got out of college, and it's quite a thing. The, that happened after the Pacers' first season in the NBA, and they drew pretty well because fans were excited about being in the NBA and seeing all these players they had never seen before coming in. John Havlicek and different guys, Jabbar, and but still, at the end of that year, the Pacers just didn't have adequate ownership.
It was a labor of love, you know.
Yeah,
That was one of the things that, having grown up in New York, I can tell you that, everybody loved the Nets, but, uh, those who really followed the league, the cognoscentes like yourself, the aficionados, they knew the Pacers were, they were the Celtics of the ABA.
yeah,
Let's face it.
yeah,
They were the Celtics of the ABA, in terms of knowing how to take care of their ball players.
mm-hmm.
There was family atmosphere always. I mean, and everybody should have been trying to, you know, not reinvent the wheel, but just copy the blueprint. You know,
Yeah, yeah,
the Pacers were it, but the ABA was a wonderful league, gave us a lot of thrills. I think about this is a big victory. Going back to this announcement, it's a big victory. I can only think about a guy like Bert Averett,
mm-hmm.
who might have been eligible.
Yeah, he would have been.
Um, you mentioned George Carter. I think about Goo Kennedy, who we just lost recently,
Sam Smith.
and was
Sam
that
Smith. Sam Smith
Sam
was another
Smith,
one.
another
Yeah,
one? Yeah.
yeah. He allowed Sam
So
Smith allowed. Let me add, Sam Smith is in the hospital dying, and he allowed Scott Carter to take a photo of him in the bed to kind of promote the cause. Here's a guy who's got all these
I
medical
remember.
advances. He could use some help. And so that probably helped push it over. I asked Scott once, what got this done? What got it over the hump? And there was an article that was done a few years ago in USA Today about George Carter and how ABA players are really struggling, some of them, and they don't have a pension, this kind of thing. Didn't really point out that it was kind of the ABA's own fault that it didn't get done. But and then Bob Costas deserves credit here because he was an announcer for the
Yeah,
Spirit
I heard
of
that
St.
he
Louis.
got involved.
Yeah, he called the commissioner. He called Adam Silver. Said, "Look, read that article in USA Today, and this should not happen. This should not be the case. The ABA did so much for basketball, and that really was a major element of this victory that they had. Costas was a great asset for this."
Yeah, I did. In fact, I read it today. I had no idea that he was so instrumental.
Yeah, he really was.
Yeah, so I like I said, I did a little homework. Yeah, and some of the things that I read, and we can't get into all of it, of course, but I'm truly amazed at the people who did step up. And let's face it, you know better than anyone how many unsung heroes there were in this effort. The guy who's going to get all the notoriety, a lot of it, deservedly so, is Scott Tarter. But Costas, I think your partner is, and I know you're going to be modest, but I think your partner is it can't be overlooked.
Well, I reported it, but
and that's important. That's important.
Yeah. But no, I take no credit, because I know a lot of people worked on it, and I don't have influence, particularly like Bob Costas can call Adam Silver and kind of kick him in the butt, and Scott Tarter's the guy who worked with the NBA representative over and over and over again, endless conversations, that kind of thing. So, and guys like Dr. J and Rick Barry certainly helped. Some of the guys in the Hall of Fame who had played in the ABA, they promoted this cause, supported it. So it was a group effort, but really one guy, Scott Tarter, gets about 90% of the credit for it, I think.
You mentioned Rick Barry. That's a little surprising. I didn't know that he was involved. I knew Doc was involved.
Yeah.
But to say that Rick Barry was involved, that's pretty interesting, because I remember listening to Mr. Barry during an interview, and he had this reputation, not being such a nice guy. But I remember watching him during an interview, and he was very aware of what people thought of him.
Yeah.
And he said, people are saying all these things, but they don't try and get to know me.
Yeah.
And so I always said, well, if I ever had the opportunity, I'll try and reach out to him, and I might still do that one day. I don't know.
Yeah, Rick had a certain demeanor on the court and a certain attitude that turned off opposing fans, but the guy played hard, and he qualifies as a good guy. I've talked to him a few times when I was doing different projects, writing things, and he's always been very helpful to me. The book that I wrote on the formation of the Pacer franchise, he took the trouble to email a photo to me that I used in the book, and we had some complications that took a little while, and he hung in there with it. So little things like that, I really appreciated. Rick, in my mind, is a good guy, a good person. He just had a certain demeanor as a player that turned people off. He'd walk around with his hands on his hips, and he was always complaining about this or that, but that's not his character. That's on the basketball court. So, and we mentioned Bob Nedelicki before. He deserves credit too, because he certainly he worked the phones a lot and called guys and kept them up to date. And Nedelicki got involved in this as well.
I was hoping to talk with him before I spoke with you. And I'll say this, having never really been in contact with the man before. I mean, we're all in that same Facebook page, those pages devoted to the ABA.
Yeah.
And I may have liked a few things he said, he may have liked a few things I said, but we never really connected. But when I reached out to him by messenger today, and I told him that I was going to be talking to you, and I asked him, I said, could I talk with you? He was like, sure, give me a call. And he just went ahead and gave me his number.
Yeah.
And but that's the ABA.
Yeah.
That's the ABA. I mean, there's so many people, and they all seem to be gracious with their time, whether they've talked to me or what. I'll tell you what, I became friends with Stan Albeck's son, John, who you might know. And I mean, I had never seen John in person. I never met his dad, but I knew that his dad was a phenomenal coach. And so talked with John a few times and offering my memories of him. And meanwhile, his father, who was still alive at the time, is in the next room, you know. Well, sadly, Stan Albeck, and again, for those of you who don't know, he was a terrific coach, spent time in the NBA. He was Michael Jordan's first coach with the Chicago Bulls. And he also spent time with the Kentucky Colonels as an assistant coach under Hubie Brown with that phenomenal front line. But yeah, so sadly, Coach Albeck passed away, but John invited me, and not everybody got this invite. So I was very humbled that he invited me to come to the funeral, and so I did. You know, it was important for me because even though I never met the man, I kind of felt like through John I got to know him a little bit. You know, but Coach Albeck is another one of those great ABA stories. You know, I still can, in my mind's eye, I can still see Coach Albeck and Coach Brown in Kentucky with the perm.
Yeah.
You know, I can still see that. You know, and you know, Coach Albeck, he had quite a career too.
Oh yeah. Well, to me, the bottom line, the best thing about the ABA was that it gave second chances to a lot of people and provided opportunities for other people who would not have ever gotten into the NBA if not for that. I mean, you look at just taking the Pacer franchise, you know, Slick Leonard is in the Hall of Fame now as a coach, won 3 ABA championships. Well, he was selling graduation supplies and class rings an hour north of Indianapolis when the ABA was formed. He had been with the Baltimore Bullets to the NBA, lost that job. He was out of basketball. He's up, you know, traveling around the high school selling graduation supplies and class rings. And the ABA gave him another coaching opportunity. Various players, of course, Roger Brown is a well-known story, working in a factory in Dayton. The ABA gave him a chance. So it just gave a lot of guys. When the ABA was formed, there were only 9 NBA teams. So there were first team All-Americans not making the NBA. You know, that's how closed it was. It was just almost impossible to get into the NBA unless you were truly great. And the ABA opened things up and guys got opportunities and got better and better. And that to me is the great contribution of the ABA to basketball. So a lot of coaches came out of the ABA. You mentioned Hubie Brown and Stan Albeck, you know, Slick Leonard.
Doug Moe, Larry Brown.
Sure, yeah, exactly. And then a lot of players, you know. And then, of course, the ABA played by its own set of rules. You didn't have to be done with college, you know. You could leave college early, like Dr. J, and get into the ABA.
Dr. J, Spencer Haywood was another one.
Yeah, you know, they expanded the opportunity for people. So it was just good for basketball to have this league and the excitement, you know, the red, white, and blue ball. It's funny to me, the NBA certainly won't use it, but you notice every other pro league uses a multicolored ball. The WNBA, the G League, over in China, Europe, they all have a ball that's more than one color, but the NBA won't do it. You know, I asked David Stern one year. I covered the All-Star game. I covered the Pacers for the Indianapolis Star for 12 years, and I was at the All-Star game one year in Houston and asked David Stern, "Have you guys ever considered, you know, like a red, white, and blue ball?" And he just kind of laughed at me. He said, no, that never happens. But think how it just looks so good. You know, it makes the game that much more exciting, and the shots look so good when they got the rotation on the ball.
Yes.
And now, one thing I do differ with some people. A lot of people talk about how the ABA changed how the game was played, and the NBA just adopted the ABA style of play, but that didn't happen for a long time. You know, as you know, when the leagues merged, there was no three-point shot for a few years.
There was no three-point shot. That's right.
When the three-point was brought in, it was hardly used at all. A team might take 53 pointers in an entire season. You know, it wasn't until the 2000s that Steph Curry and guys came in and started lighting it up from the 3-point line. So I differ with those who think
Yeah.
that the NBA copied the ABA style of play, but still the ABA had great influence on basketball.
Oh, no question. And you talk about the 3-point shot, and you talk about Curry. I love Steph Curry. Don't get me wrong, but you and I both know the NBA players today, they don't use it. They abuse it. You talked about how infrequent the shot was back when they first put it in the NBA.
Yeah.
I remember, and this is another Hubie Brown thing. Boy, I'd love to get to talk to him. Hubie Brown once said that the guy who he thinks best utilized the 3-point shot was somebody who played for him, Louis Dampier.
Uh-huh.
And, I have a hard time, well, who am I to argue with Coach Brown anyway? But I'd be hard pressed to find somebody who utilized it as well as he did. And even today, I mean, you've got, I was talking with Dirk Gervin the other day about this. You got guys driving to the basket, and they can get to the bucket uncontested, and they're kicking it out to the 3-point line. That's horrible basketball.
Yeah.
But the ABA did give us the 3-point shot. It does make the game more exciting, especially when guys are hitting the shot, when it's utilized properly. That's the key, to utilize it properly. So hopefully, the NBA gets back to some fundamental basketball. But I did want to circle back to something you said a moment ago. You was talking about how some people argue that the ABA, the NBA brought ABA basketball to its league. Mm-hmm. I want to circle back to that because I think there is that argument to be made because before the NBA, before the merger act, and I read this in Terry Pluto's book, Loose Balls. Somebody, I don't remember who, but someone said that the ABA was jazz, improvisation, and it really was funky. Mm-hmm. Whereas the NBA was more of a symphony orchestra. Everything was structured and orchestrated.
Yeah.
So I think there's an argument to be made there. Mm-hmm. What do you say?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The ABA was more wide open. I may be biased because I know the Pacer teams weren't any good in the 80s after they got into the NBA, and they weren't playing, a wide open style of play. It didn't look like an ABA game at all if you went to a game then. Now, maybe that was different, with other teams, but the NBA
remained a lot of changes after before their first year in the NBA. I know Billy Knight was gone.
When
the Pacers, I'm saying.
Yeah, the Pacers, when they first, no, Billy Knight was with the Pacers when they first got into the NBA. He was still there. And I got a media guide right here. I could look it up if you want. But
no, again, I'm not going to argue with you either. I always thought, and I should have, if I knew I was going to bring up Billy Knight, and I should have known because I love Billy Knight, but I thought that he was involved in a 3-way trade with the Knicks. He went to the Knicks, and then from the Knicks went to, I want to say, Kansas City.
Nah, well, he played, I think, maybe at the end of his career for Kansas City. He played in Boston. He played in Buffalo. But the first Pacers NBA team, 76-77, well, you know what? Yeah, Billy Knight was their leading scorer, averaged 26 a game.
Is that right? Okay.
Danny Roundfield, Dave Robish, Darnell Hillman remained with the NBA Pacers. Don Buzzi, Freddie Lewis played a little bit. Super John Williamson was with them for 30 games, So the first Pacer NBA team won 36 games. They weren't too bad, but Billy Knight was with them for a while. Then he got traded away. Then he came back later on.
He did go back. Yeah, and Williamson went back to the Nets too.
The Pacers, yeah it was weird. Slick Leonard, as good a coach as he was, didn't do a great job all the time with his personnel moves, making trades and so forth. And he basically gave Super John away. Slick didn't like things to be too wide open. And, you know, he didn't get much in return for Super John, but in fact, he traded Darnell Hillman for Super John, I believe. But then he only kept
Because
Super John.
Hillman went to the Mets.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. So, you know, but yeah, Super John, he was an exciting player, but he wasn't Slick's kind of player. So he was only a Pacer for about 30 games.
Wow.
But yeah.
So, you know, I wanted this to be, you know, again, going back to my childhood, I wanted this to be somewhat of a celebration, you know, of, you know, what took place with this recognition payment
Mhm.
for the former players. Uh, you have helped make the celebration tonight, and you know, I hope that guys like Bert Everett and Goo Kennedy and, you know, George Carter, I hope they're smiling somewhere up there.
Mhm.
You know, thank you again for your time. But before we go, I do want to mention that you have a book out now, and I want you to
Yeah.
please hold it up and give us the plug.
Okay.
No
Yeah.
shameless self-promotion here.
In 2017, I came out with this book called Reborn. And can you see it okay? And
Yes.
it covers the formation of the Pacer franchise in the first 2 seasons when they got off the ground, and all the fortunate things that had to happen for the Pacers to just survive. I mean, they were so lucky at the beginning, getting Roger Brown out of a factory, getting Slick Leonard out of a job up in Kokomo, Indiana, a sales job. Freddie Lewis, you know, was the third string point guard in Cincinnati. They got him. They got Mel Daniels in a steal of a trade because the Minnesota franchise was moving and they needed
The
cash.
Minnesota Muskies.
Yeah, they moved to
I
Miami.
think they were the Muskies then.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That was before the Pittsburgh team moved to Minnesota. So the Minnesota Muskies moved to Miami and they needed cash right away. And they traded Mel Daniels to the Pacers for $100,000. And so the Pacers had so many fortunate things happen to just survive those first few years. And they added George McGinnis, you know, they added other guys. And in Indianapolis, I mean, you would have had to have been here, but the Pacers were a big deal. They really kind of united the city. I thought they had a really positive impact on race relations. There was the one place where there was the one place where blacks and whites could come together for the same event, and the players were so popular. You know, Mel Daniels, George McGinnis, and Darnell Hillman and Freddie Lewis. You know, were so popular. They were out in the community, and they really, I think, educated a lot of people.
Ned Licky was pretty popular too, wasn't he?
Oh, he was. He absolutely was. And he was kind of, they called him the Joe Namath of the Indiana Pacers. Playboy. He opened a bar, you know.
That's perfect.
And Neto and Mel were really close. Neto and Mel were really tight. And Pacers, when they won championships, used to have this banquet, like a ham and beans dinner out at the fairgrounds. And fans could go for $5 to this celebration banquet dinner for the championship team. And it was televised. And Mel and Neto would always, they'd get up there together, each other and joke around. And I just think it had a lot to do with educating some people about, yeah, you know, black and white can get along pretty well. They really made that impact. And then because they were successful, it got a downtown arena built. And that sparked downtown development. Downtown was dead, you know, in the late 60s. But when they started building that arena, it got things going downtown. So the Pacers really had a huge impact on the city beyond just the basketball games.
And I think they still do too.
Sure. Yeah.
Without question. I mean, you know, you've had a lot of terrific talent come through, you know, to wear the Indiana Pacer uniform, you know, not just Reggie Miller, you know, there were some other guys, Rick Smiths, you know, the Davis boys.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, talk about talented guys. And while I don't know them personally, you probably do. I get the feeling that they're right up there along with the old Pacers, you know, in terms of popularity and what they have done for the community. Am I wrong?
No. They, you know, they didn't win a championship. So, you know, it's funny. I covered those teams for the newspaper here locally, and I remember fans always complaining about him, you know, when they'd get to the conference finals, and one time they got to the finals in 2000. So people were happy about that, but they're, you know how it is. The sports fans are always unhappy with this or that and
What
complaining.
have you done for me lately?
And now as they look, people are nostalgic about those teams now. You know, the Davis brothers, and obviously Reggie is always going to be huge here, and other players as well. Jalen Rose. It's funny how many ex-Pacers are on television here and there doing things, and so they're finally remembered. And it's human nature, I think, when you look back on something, to filter out the negative memories and look and think of the highlights, and you have a good feeling about it. So, you know, hey, back in the ABA, the fans often booed the Pacers. They booed Lewis. They did, man. It was harsh. It was a harsh environment. They'd throw things on the floor if they had to complain about a referee's call.
Did
Referees.
they think that they were in Philadelphia or what?
I know. Oh, it's really, people don't realize what the environment was like at some of those ABA games. I mean, they would hang a referee in effigy, you know.
Oh, no.
That kind of thing. There was a game where a couple fans attacked a referee afterward. Again, fans would throw something on the court to protest the call.
Oh, my goodness.
So, and again, if a player wasn't performing well, you might get booed. But overall, the memories are very positive about those days.
Oh, my goodness. I see that. Well, I mean, the booing and everything, you know, everybody gets booed, you know, but you know, somehow it sounds like it was just a little bit more extreme, put it that way.
And it was just kind of the times, you know, the late 60s with Vietnam War going on and everything, the assassinations, the whole country.
Yeah, 68.
You know, it's funny, the first year of the Pacers, it was just a love fest. Oh, we're so happy to have a team. We love you guys. You know, the second year it changed just like that. And you think about it, you know, 67 was the summer of love. 68, we had assassinations, you know, Dr. King and others, and the whole mood was different.
Yeah, King and RFK, Robert F. Kennedy.
In 68, like Jimmy Rail, who's a local guy, played at Indiana University. He was voted the team's most popular player the first year of the franchise. He got booed the second year.
Wow.
And, you know, it was harsh, man. And that's the kind of thing I covered in the book, just how dramatically things changed. But then that second year, Slick came in and they had a playoff run, and that's when the city fell in love with the team. But it was not that easy, and it didn't happen instantaneously too. They had to do some things first.
You know, you brought up some of the social unrest back, you know, in 67, 68. And that kind of paralleled with the beginning of the ABA and, you know, into the early 70s. I mean, there were some angry people, and, you know, not to put race into this, but let's face it, I think the ABA came at just the perfect time, because I know for a large number of Black people, it was all about self-expression, and certainly the ABA allowed that self-expression.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
Dr. J was the epitome of self-expression.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah. Connie Hawkins, you know, brought
Hawkins was
the
another one. Yeah, absolutely. Before Doc.
Yeah, and you know, like Darnell Hillman is still hugely popular around here for two reasons. He was a great jumper. He dunked it, and he had a huge afro. And, you know, people remember that afro, you know, and he was hugely popular just because he had flair, and that's was reflective of the time.
Well, that was the entire ABA. I mean, you know, Doc and Hillman had the big fros. Mike Gale, well, his fro was a notch or two below.
Yeah.
I think I had more of an afro than Mike Gale, actually. Mike, if you ever watched this, not putting you down, man, you had a great fro. But yeah, but there were a few great fros out there. You know, Doc and Hillman, though, they were at the top of that list. Artis Gilmore.
Yeah.
Yeah. He had the length, you know, he had the growth. But like I said, Doc and Hillman were, high and way above everybody else in that regard.
Yeah.
But listen, We've been in for almost an hour. I promised myself I was going to keep this to half an hour, but you just can't get through topics involving the ABA in 30 minutes. It's
No,
impossible.
no, I've never done a 30-minute podcast.
But I do want to thank you for your time. It's been a great pleasure meeting you finally. And one day maybe we'll get a chance to do this again. Maybe we'll do a follow-up, and you could tell me how some of those players, those remaining players from the ABA, how they're doing, how they're faring.
Sure. Yeah, I was on the
let's
phone
raise
with
them
Rick
up,
Mount.
man.
I was on the phone with Rick Mount yesterday. I got a text from Billy Keller today. I had lunch with George McGinnis last week, so because I'm researching another book, so I stay in touch.
Right, I remember you saying that.
Yeah, so yeah, at least the Pacer guys, and I talked to Daryl Carrier on the phone a few months ago. I've talked to Randy Mahaffey, and it's fun to talk to these guys, and they all got stories, and I'm always up for that. So yeah,
I'd like to be a fly on the wall for when all you guys get together.
Yeah. No, it's fun, and it's just always interesting to me to be around former athletes, guys who once were on top of the world. Now they're just like you and me, basically. They may be well remembered, they may be recognized occasionally, but they're just living a regular life, and it's not an easy adjustment for those guys to make, and it usually takes some time. George McGinnis talks about that. One day you're recognized every time you go out, and now nobody recognizes him when he goes to the grocery store. So
he's still doing TV for the Pacers at all.
George?
Yeah.
No, he did a little bit when he moved away. He got cut by the Pacers in the fall of '82. He moved to Denver for a few years. He came back in '85 and did some TV, but he got into other things too. And then he started his own business that did really well later. So he doesn't do anything now. Darnell Hillman retired a couple of years ago from the front office. He was community relations and did an outstanding job. No.
He was involved in this project too, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I did a thing, Darnell Hillman in 1977 won the NBA Slam Dunk Contest. It was not sponsored by the league. It was sponsored by CBS. And Darnell, at halftime of the final NBA playoff game of the year, won the Slam Dunk Contest. And he wore a softball jersey that he had when he was in Indianapolis playing a softball league with Pacer front office and some other players, sponsored by the Bottle Shop. A good friend of mine owns the Bottle Shop now, still in business. So Darnell, here he is talking to Don Criqui after winning the Slam Dunk Contest, putting on a Bottle Shop softball jersey. So we've recreated that and sold it. And we've had a couple of events at the Bottle Shop where fans can come and buy a Bottle Shop jersey and meet Darnell, and Scott Trotter is selling the ABA ball now for his company.
Yes.
We've had a couple events, and Darnell donates his time very generously to the Dropping Dimes cause. He takes nothing from it himself. So Darnell's an outstanding guy. He's an interesting guy. He went from the Army to the Pacers and grew that afro, and he was in a whole different world. He had
a different world, absolutely.
Yeah, he had been in the Army for 2 years, and so he's an interesting guy in his own right.
Well, hopefully one day I get a chance to talk to some of the former Pacer players. I think that would be a blast too.
Yeah.
Listen, I want to thank you for your time. It's
sure.
Speaking of a blast, it's been a blast for me. I appreciate you coming on with me. We'll do this again sometime real soon, I hope.
Okay. Yeah. Feel free anytime. Be glad to come on with you.
All right. So, folks, there you have it. Mark Monteith. By all means, remember to go pick up his book if you haven't picked it up already. It's been out a couple of years, but the name is Rebound.
Reborn.
I'm sorry.
Reborn. Yeah.
Did I say Rebound? No, Rebound is another book.
Pro basketball to Indianapolis. Yeah.
Reborn. Rebound is another book about Earl Manigault.
That's right. Right. I called it Reborn because that's what the ABA did. The careers were reborn, because of the ABA.
Absolutely. Okay, so thank you again for your time, Mark. And for those of you watching this, thank y'all for tuning in. This is Matt Clare saying be blessed. Remember to do something nice for somebody. and we'll see you again next.